Hey y'all, we're going to take a look at the discriminant here. So if you look at the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, it's the inside of the radical here, okay? The b squared minus 4ac. Several things can happen within that radical. That's why they call it the discriminant. And I got a little table here, b squared minus 4ac. If the inside of your radical is greater than 0, then the type of solution you're going to have are two solutions, okay? And I've got an example of both of them here. Let's look here at what I've got in blue down here. If you're colorblind, it's the bottom left of this dry erase board. 2x squared minus 6x minus 1 equals 0. So plugging it all in, I've got negative 6 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 1, which is 36 plus 8. That becomes 44. Okay, so that's 44. 44 is a number bigger than 0, right? Which means I'm going to have two real solutions. Now, what's going to happen here is I can have two irrational solutions or I can have two rational solutions. If this number is not a perfect square, and 44 isn't, right? I can't take the square root of 44 and have it come out to be a nice number. It comes out to be a decimal of some kind. Then you can have two irrational solutions. So if I went with a quadratic formula in its entirety to solve this, I would have come out with x equaling 3 plus or minus the square root of 11 over 2, right? So the two solutions, the first one would be 3 plus root 11 over 2. The second one would be 3 minus root 11 over 2. All right, so two irrational solutions. Now look at what I've got in black. So that's what I've got right here if you're colorblind. 2x squared plus 9x plus 10 equals 0. Plugging it into the discriminant, I'll have 9 squared minus 4 times 2 times 10. That's 81 minus 80, which is 1. 1's a perfect square. So anytime you get a perfect square out of a determinant, right, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, those types of numbers, then what you're going to have are two real solutions that are rational. All right? And if you solve this guy in its entirety, I would have come up with x equals negative 2 or x equals negative 5 halves. Those are two rational numbers, right? They don't have like the square root of 11 or something like that in there. So that's what happens when the discriminant is going to come out to be bigger than 0, right? In this case, 44 and 1 were bigger than 0. Is you'll have two answers. They're both real. One could be they could be irrational. They could be rational. All right, look at my next scenario. If it equals 0, then you're going to have one real repeated solution is what it's called. And that's what I have down here, bottom right in orange. X squared plus 4x plus 4. It'd be like having a 1x squared out in front, but plugging it into the discriminant, I'll have 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4, which is 16 minus 16, which is 0. All right, so if you went in its entirety in the quadratic formula and solved this, actually you could factor this one. Turns out you could factor this one up here in black as well. But this guy, if you factor it, solved it, if you use a quadratic and solved it, you're going to find out that you're going to have x equaling negative 2, right? One real solution. One real repeated solution, actually. So that's what's going on there if your discriminant equals 0. Now, if your discriminant is less than 0, you're going to have two complex answers, and that's what we're seeing right here in green, or in the middle right side of your board if you're colorblind. 4x squared plus x plus 4 equals 0. So that's going to be 1 squared minus 4 times 4 times 4. That's 1 minus 64, which is a negative 63, right? That's a negative. So imagine that. You got a negative inside your radical. Somewhere in there, you're going to be sucking an eye out of there, right? And sure enough, that's what I've got. If I was to solve this in its entirety, I'm going to have x equaling negative 1/8 plus or minus 3 root 7 over 8 times the I, right? So two complex solutions. So that's the discriminant. If you're taking my class, you'll be seeing some homework problems that are going to ask you about this discriminant thing. That's all there is to it. Hope this helps.